Todd was trying to rip Dave off, maybe get himself another freebie like that transmission part he took after the Vagos gave bro a beatdown at the toy box. Come to think of it, that was Todd's idea too. The fucker was getting real good at letting others clean up his messes. You fuck with one, you fuck with all was damn handy if you knew how to work it. Of course, I didn't know any of that when I jumped from the truck and ran to help my Vagos brother. As soon as I got there, Big Todd launched one of his patented sucker punches at Dave. His swing missed, but Dave's didn't. The dealer cracked Todd good. It was the last punch he would throw. My first strike smashed into the man's third rib, breaking it off and puncturing his lung. The dealer toppled and hit the pavement like King Kong, but I wasn't finished yet. No, sir. It was no gentleman's game when you were in a street fight. My approach was always to beat my opponent until he couldn't fight back. No different from brawling bare knuckle in a bowling alley. Dave was a big son of a bitch, and I wanted to make damn sure he wouldn't get up again. In the heat of the moment, Big George was living and breathing the green, baby, and there was no separating the government informant from the street brawling animal I was bred to be. I was still pummeling the man on the ground when someone grabbed me from behind. "That's enough, George," yelled Jack Fight. "You're killing him." I didn't end Dave's life that morning, but the man was definitely out, way out. A few days later, Big Roy called me into the Lady Luck and ripped me a new one. "The cops have been watching me lately, motherfucker. I'm trying to keep a low profile, and you go beat up one of the biggest dope dealers in town." Todd called for backup. What was I supposed to do? Todd said he never called you, Roy fired back. I was speechless. "I'm pulling your patch," he said. "In fact, I want your whole fucking cut." I wasn't ready to call out Todd as a lying bastard. Not yet, anyway. I fetched my cut from the truck, turned it over to Big Roy, then drove back to Via Vista fuming. This wasn't the first time Todd had thrown me under the bus. When I was still a hang-around, he'd done the same fucking thing at a bar we called the Bloody Bucket. Sitting around getting hammered that night, Todd had given me a nudge and pointed out a group of 20-somethings shooting pool. Don't know what it was about, outlaws and pool tables that generated so much friction, but trouble was coming again, with a capital T, and that rhymes with P that stands for pool. "See that asshole wearing that Hard Rock shirt?" Todd said to me. "I hate that cocksucker. Go fuck him up." "What for? Don't ask questions, just do it." "Yeah, but what the fuck? Are you down for this club or not?" "You heard Big Todd," North jumped in. "Do what the man says." It was one of those rock in a hard place moments John would later warn me about, when I was forced to choose between the long-term success of the operation and taking part in the exact kind of abuse I'd gone under to prevent. I'd held my nose and chose the mission. On Todd's orders, I beat that kid down. The poor bastard never knew what hit him, or why. Of course, the irony of what I'd done hadn't been lost on me. I'd gone back to being a bully again, just like the bad old days at Hemet High. When Big Roy learned what had happened at the Bucket, he wasn't happy. It was okay to beat the shit out of people, but beatings had to be authorized. It was either Roy's way or the highway. Todd and North saved their own skins, denying they told me to beat the kid down, so all the shit got flung my way. Those fuckers hung me out to dry, but what the hell could I do? They were patch holders, and I was just a lowly hang-around. So I played the good soldier and took one for the United States of America. Now here I was getting screwed by Todd once again. In less than 24 hours, I'd earned my patch and lost it, which had to be some sort of record for ineptitude in the 40-plus year history of the Vagos MC. "This shit's going to national," Roy promised as I left Lady Luck. "And if Tramp and I find out you're lying, it's going to be your ass that's run down the road." Fucking great. So now I was faced with starting over as a prospect. Even worse, Big Roy was threatening to confiscate the ATF's bike and boot me out of the club, putting a stake through the heart of Operation 22 Green. When I called John Carr with the bad news, he couldn't believe it. "You what?" "I lost my patch." "But you just got it." "That's right, and now I've lost it." There was a moment's silence when my handler processed this. How could you let that happen? I was in no mood for a pissing contest, so I gathered myself and told John not to sweat it. Yes, I was angry and discouraged, but I had a way out of that mess, an ace in the hole. The hand was played a few days later when Big Roy called me back to the Lady Luck for a powwow with Todd and North. I didn't waste time bluffing when I got there. No more bullshit, I barked at Todd. You called a code 69 and you fucking know it. That caught the bastard off guard. No matter what the circumstances, you didn't rat out her brother, which, believe it or not, didn't strike me as ironic at the time. That's what you say, Todd managed. That's what you say, Todd managed. I don't remember that. Now Big Roy broke in. If George is lying, what is he doing at that house with you? How the fuck should I know, Todd answered. He just showed up. You know how he's always riding around and shit. Man, I would have demolished that son of a bitch if he hadn't been doing such a good job of it himself. You could have driven a freight train liner through the holes in Todd's case. He looked to the jury for support, but North and Roy weren't busting his story. Big Todd wasn't what you call a sympathetic defendant anyway. He'd been hitting the meth pretty heavy and using club money to support his habit. All the lies, stealing, and cheating had already got him busted from vice president down to sergeant at arms, and now he was one step away from joining the rest of us rank and file peons, or even worse for him, losing his patch and getting run down the road. You going to take his word over mine, Todd protested. Cut the shit, asshole, I shouted. Fuck you, Todd bellowed, giving me a shove. That Vogel was used to barking like a tough dog and having people back down, but I wasn't a prospect anymore. I didn't have to take anyone's shit. I went nose to nose with that son of a bitch, daring him to throw a punch and put me in the mood to dance. If Todd took the bait, I was ready to drill him, but the chicken shit wouldn't bite. When he realized he was about to get a beatdown in front of Roy and North, he clucked once and stepped back. And that's when I flipped my whole car. Without realizing it at the time, I saved my own ass by getting lost on the way to Dave's, the dealer's house, and stopping at Jack Fight's place for directions. I asked Jack to attend the meeting, and when he backed my version of the story, Todd was pretty much toast. Next day, Terry the Tramp handed down his ruling from on high in the desert. Big Roy was ordered to return my cut and pull Todd's patch. It was back to prospecting for sergeant at arms. There was even talk of running Big Roy down the road because of all the chaos he'd been causing. A few days later, I drove back to the cul-de-sac and apologized to Dave the dealer for putting him in the hospital. I ain't mad at you, said Dave, talking with stitches in his face and his arm in a sling. I understand it was just one brother looking out for the other, but I sure want a piece of that other dude. I'm gonna get that motherfucker. I imagine there were quite a few people who felt that way about Big Todd Brown, and odds were that someday one of them was going to follow through and get that motherfucker. Now that I had Loki, with all the rights and privileges that patch conveyed, I needed a Harley under my ass befitting my elevated status. I've been complaining long and loud about the piece of shit touring classic that the ATF had stuck me with, and finally Carl was able to wrangle me a new set of wheels. My second ride was a Harley Davidson Heritage the government had confiscated from one of the Warlocks MCs. Those outlaws must have said thank you, Jesus, and laughed their asses off as that eyesore was rolled away. The bike came from Washington, D.C., looking like it had been left out in the weather for 10 years. But I didn't care, even rust covered. That machine was a damn sight, better than that rat bike I'd been saddled with for 9 months. As I loaded the Heritage into the bed of the pickup, I informed Jack Carr I intended to make a few alterations. My boss won't like that, warned John. Oh yeah? Well, then tell your boss to ride this piece of shit. As soon as I got back to Via Vista, I went to work, stripping that Hardy down to the frame. I threw on some ape hangers and got rid of the saddlebags. I retooled the motor and tranny, did a bunch of little tweaks, then rolled it back out again. I'd built her Outlaw through and through. Now that I had myself a patch and a decent bike, I could finally take my girlfriend on some of the club runs. Jenna was actually happy with the idea of spending quality time with her suspiciously gay boyfriend. Our first opportunity to ride together came on a Vagos run down to San Diego. Hammett intended to make a show of force outside the Hells Angels Club, and a few of the Vols were coming along for the ride. A 1%er motorcycle club was a men-only organization, and most members treated their old ladies as a little more than meat.